Hi, thanks for joining. In today's video, we're going to look at how to set up the configuration for your AutoGen Studio models and agents and workflows in a text file that you can use, so when you boot up your AutoGen Studio, it will be pre-configured just the way you like it. Now, a couple good reasons for doing this. Maybe you just want to have stability and consistency with your configuration. That way, if you have to upgrade or if you need to rebuild your AutoGen Studio, you'll have your consistent configuration ready to go. Another great use case is perhaps you want to share your configuration, your workflows, your models with other people, being able to share just the text file. Or perhaps you support developers who want to start working with AutoGen Studio, and that can allow you to use a shared repository, so you could potentially have multiple different developers adding their templates to a common build and be able to share your model, workflows, agents, skills, etc. with a team. You may want to package it up as a container, pre-configured a certain way to be able to distribute it. We'll get into the container packaging in the next video, but in this video we're going to look at how to set up those text configuration files and then to load AutoGen Studio in a way to where it will automatically load up with the models and agents, skills, and workflows that you've pre-configured for it. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start by looking and seeing where we can find the documentation that's available. There is a documentation site at microsoft.github.io/AutoGen, and you can find docs and the blog there. Now, the docs for AutoGen Studio specifically, they aren't really there yet. So while there's a lot of useful things in documentation, it's better to go over to the GitHub repo and look at the README for AutoGen Studio. But before we do that, I do want to highlight one thing about that you can find on docs. AutoGen's evolving constantly, and you may see some features that show up or things that aren't working right or things that you're interested in being able to do you're not sure or if supported. So you want to stay aware of and close to the roadmap if you start using AutoGen more frequently. And so the one simple way to always remember where the roadmap is, multiple ways of finding it, but if you go to docs and getting started, it's just right at the very bottom of the docs getting started page. Say if you come here, click on roadmap, that'll bring you over to the GitHub roadmap where you can see all of the different stuff that's on the roadmap. They're using GitHub projects to do the project management for all the day-to-day stuff, so you can see as features that you're looking for example, group chat is in progress right now, and you can go in and see the exact kind of status and when they check in updates for that and get a jump start on when the next things are going to be ready. The GitHub repository is at github.com/Microsoft/AutoGen, and this is the GitHub repository for everything AutoGen. The entire website's on here, all the documentation's on here in different, so this is a kind of your typical big mono repo where there's a lot of different projects in one common repository. And one thing that's interesting is that the instructions that you'll find for AutoGen Studio, say go to the AutoGen Studio repo and clone it. There isn't a dedicated sub-repository for this, so we'll clone down the full AutoGen repo and then navigate to the AutoGen Studio subdirectory. So we'll go ahead and it's under samples and AutoGen Studio, or apps, and then AutoGen Studio. And this is probably the best documentation that's currently available for AutoGen Studio. You can go here and find information about installation. And since we're going to be customizing our install, we'll go ahead and do this installation from source here that's covered here on this page. And I'll go through that step by step. But for reference here, you can find the documentation. Now I've spun up a fresh container to do this installation in. I'm using a container that's running on my remote Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, and I'm using some VS Code extensions where it runs just like it's running on my local desktop. Now, you don't need to run on Kubernetes if you'd like to. I have another video on my channel about that. You could run a container locally, or you could just open up a command prompt and run there. There are some separate instructions for Windows that are in the repository, and I'm not going to be doing a build on Windows. I'm just going to be doing it here on Linux. I have done it on my Mac as well, and the commands to do the installation. So here you can see a list of all the commands that gets us up and running, and these work the same on my Mac as they would in a Linux environment. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and install these now. As I mentioned, we're going to customize this first. First, you can see in the list of commands here, we just do an installation of some prerequisites. So I install git, curl, python, pip, and virtual env. Even though I'm doing this inside of a container, which is already an isolated environment, I am going to use a virtual env. I did try this before without doing a virtual env, and it did not go smoothly. Easy way is just install the virtual env, and it works great. And then after that, we're going to download here the latest installation script for our Node.js. And this actually works in concert with apt, so this will get the GPG key and get everything prepared to set up a local environment variable, so that way when I run this next command, apt install Node.js, it's going to use whatever node source says is the current version. Next, we clone the Git repository, and from there we would navigate to the AutoGen Studio repository, create our virtual environment, and do the installation of our Python stuff, and then install Gatsby and Yarn for the front end. And you see we navigate to a front end directory here. We do this yarn install and yarn build. That builds our front end environment for us. Once we've done that, we can just run our AutoGen Studio. Now this is how you would build from source, and we're going to do one more thing. Right, we're going to go ahead and customize our dbdefaults.json here. So I'm just going to put in here, I'll just put this as a comment for now, and I'm just going to say customize dbdefaults.json file, so we don't forget to do that. And that will be where we put our models, our agents, our workflows, skills, everything that we need, so that way when we bring up our AutoGen Studio environment, it will have all of our customizations. I'll do another video later where I'm going to add some custom skills and do a lot more customization of this file, but to keep things focused, keep the eye on the ball and keep things simple for this video, I'm just going to go in and do some minimal modifications to the default dbdefaults file, so that way we can see how it works. And then in a subsequent video later, we're ready to take that next step and do more additional advanced customizations to the AutoGen Studio environment. So for now, let's go ahead and we'll start. I find sometimes when cutting and pasting, sometimes you can run into a challenge. So I don't like to cut and paste too large of chunks all at once. So I usually do a command or two at a time here. We'll go ahead and put in the apt update and install these other prerequisites here. Okay, I paused the video there for a minute or two while that was running. It probably took about 1 to 2 minutes on my system to run that. We'll go ahead and now do the node installation. Paste these in. And that one was pretty quick, maybe a minute. Now we'll go ahead and clone the repository here. And to customize the dbdefaults.json file, you'll start off when you clone the repository, navigate into the samples, apps, AutoGen Studio directory, and then to get to dbdefaults, that's going to be in our AutoGen Studio. There's another AutoGen Studio folder there, and then it should be called utils there. And so we'll navigate to that directory. Okay, and now you can see if we do an ls there, we can see our dbdefaults. You can also navigate it to it if you prefer through the file browser tree on the left here. And again, we go into samples, apps, AutoGen Studio, and then AutoGen Studio, utils, and our dbdefaults.json. Now you can see here, it's a big JSON file, and one of the advantages of using an IDE is it draws these nice lines for you that really help you to navigate. It really just, if you go to look at a file like this without a good tool, like we'll show here, for example, what it looks like in just vanilla GitHub Web UI, it can get really muddy to know where these indentation points are and what level you're in, and is agents part of models or assistant, or where does one begin and where does another. Whereas when you're able to use your IDE, it I can see very clearly here, models starts at the second gray line, right? So if I want to see when the models section ends, I just follow the second gray line, and I can see the closing bracket. And so now I know this is the beginning and end of my model section. After my model section, I can see my agents section. And here we'll see first I have a user proxy. If I've used AutoGen Studio before, so I know by default there's more than one agent in this. So we should be able to see more than one agent here. So we can see here that our agents starts at this second line. Then we see an opening bracket. So our first agent, user proxy, starts on this third line. So I can follow that down, and here's the end of our user proxy. And I can see after this I have an assistant. And one thing I don't love about the schema is that it has a type at the top, but the name can get buried further beneath. I don't know if it's a schema or if you need to do it that way. You might be able to change it around, but that's how it's done in here. So now I have to scroll down just to see what the name of this assistant is. I might have multiple assistant type agents, each with different names, and that can be a little confusing. But we will just follow this third line, and as long as we haven't see anything closed in that third line, we know we're still within the same agent. And when we get down to this config, this is part of that same agent definition, and this whole thing is the definition of the agent called primary assistant. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to my custom primary assistant. I actually want to change the user proxy's name too, so we'll just call this my custom user proxy. And now we're going to go ahead and scroll down into, so we can see skills here, and I'll just leave the skills as they are for now. We'll have another video later we'll show adding some additional skills. And after skills we can see workflows. So we can see here this is our workflow section. The second line here begins and ends all of our workflows. So when we see a termination point in the second line, that'll be the end of our workflow section. The third line here, we can see we're opening an individual workflow. So if I want to see, I can see my first workflow's name, visualization agent workflow, and I can trace this third line down. As you can see, the workflow is fairly long. So you can see right here, that whole thing is the definition of one workflow. And I'm going to leave the visualization agent workflow. I think I'm going to modify the name of the general workflow. So you can see now in the current version there is a new, pretty new, I think it's been in here a couple days now, travel agent workflow example. And we'll skip past that, leave that there. And the last thing I want to do is I can see here now, right again on that third line, I can see the closing of the travel assistant workflow, and now the opening of this general agent workflow. And I'm going to replace the name of this one with my custom workflow. And I think that's good for now. We customize the names of a few things and to just demonstrate how to do this. And again, later we'll come in and we'll show you can go to the same file and you can add as many additional workflows, agents, skills, or models into this file that you would like. Now, one thing to mention is that AutoGen Studio does not support all of the same, or agent types. It does support all the same models. But in terms of agents, there's lots of specialized agents that you can use inside of AutoGen Framework that are not yet available within AutoGen Studio. Now, I haven't found a document that goes over that comprehensively. I did try adding, I think, the GPT assistant agent, and it was not working. But that's one of the good reasons to have that roadmap repository link. Because if you look in the roadmap, you'll find information in there about agent types that they plan to add to this, hopefully in the near future, and then be able to track the status of those agent types as they proceed on that. One thing we do know for sure is that all of the default agent types that are in here already, we can see are working. And you can add skills, and between the agent types that they have in here and that ability to add skills, the amount that you can do already just within AutoGen Studio, you can really go a long ways in making very highly complex agents to handle your particular use case. At some point we'll hopefully see feature parity between AutoGen Studio and the AutoGen framework that you can do more with currently. The web UI is catching up. Okay, so we named these custom workflows. Now, where were we? We'll just add a line here. So say code defaults.json as our step on how we want to customize those default. Now, we'll go ahead and build. Let's add a build AutoGen Studio. Okay, and so now we need to go back to the AutoGen-Studio interface. So I need to drop down 2 directories. And we can see I am in that interface now, or that subdirectory now. And I'll go ahead and we're going to create a new virtual environment called Vinv, and then we're going to go ahead and activate it. And we can tell by that parentheses venv here at the beginning of my command line prompt that my virtual environment is active. We'll go ahead and do the pip install. And this is going to take a minute, so I will go ahead and pause while this is running. That wasn't too bad. It probably took about a minute on my server here. Now we'll go ahead and I'm just going to do these one at a time. Some of these have long outputs and don't want them to accidentally trample each other. Pause this while that's running. So that one was quick, about a minute. The yarn should be a couple seconds here. It'll be a little bit longer when we do the local yarn installation for the package. So now notice before we do this yarn install and yarn build, you have to be in the front end subdirectory. So if we look in our AutoGen Studio right here, you can see we have another directory called front end. So we'll cd into this front end. And I'm going to do the yarn install and yarn build command separately because these are going to probably take a couple minutes each. Go ahead and I'll go ahead and pause the video while that's running. Okay, it probably took, maybe I should have ran a timer, but it probably took about 4 or 5 minutes for the yarn install on the project here. And then I'll go ahead and do the yarn build. And this should take another couple minutes probably. And you'll see some errors like this come up, and usually it works past the errors, no problem, as long as you get to the final output and it doesn't error out when it gives a final output, it completes successfully, then you should be fine. So don't worry about errors that pop up during the build process, but this should be a clean build when all is said and done. But I'll pause it while that's completing. So bad, maybe 2 minutes or so there. So now we need to do this export OpenAI API key. So I'm going to pause my video while I do that. I'll keep that for myself, thank you. Okay, I entered my OpenAI API key. You'll replace this highlighted part with your OpenAI API key. And again, you can use other models. Sometimes I add other models after I've already built it, but in that dbdefaults.json file, you can see right here, with some nice examples, all the same 6 fields, the 6 including the description, that you can access from the GUI when you're adding models. You can access those with these keywords here to define any models here. If you'd rather go from the onset, from the time it's built, to have your models customized, we'll look at doing that in a later video. Again, to this first one, we just want to focus in on the basic element of how to configure this without complicating it with other things. Yeah, so I added my OpenAI key, and now last step is we go here to our run command, and it shouldn't matter which directory you run this from, and we can see our server starting up. You can go ahead, hit open in browser, and it takes, I hit it pretty quick, it takes a second there. There we go. And now let's go ahead and see if our custom stuff is as we expected. So we can see here that we have my custom workflow. And if we go to my agents, you can see my custom primary assistant and my custom user proxy. And so yeah, all our customizations that we made were there. So we can see now how to customize the dbdefaults.json file, easily and straightforward to build this from source, to access that, have it load that dbdefaults.json file, so we can customize our agent from text. Again, really useful to one, have a text file that carries your configuration with you. So if you need to reinstall, you need to upgrade, if there's any challenges, you've got your configuration. Now, you do need to check during updates because it's possible there could be changes to the dbdefaults, to the format of the dbdefaults file, right? But those are usually very simple to overcome versus losing all your customizations. But also too, if you want to share with other friends, other members of the community, you can just copy and paste some text, make it very simple if they know how to run AutoGen. And I think for me, the most useful, what I really intend to use this for more than anything else, are really 3 use cases. One is we're going to look at GitOps in a future video. So that way we can set up some automated CI/CD workflows so that way we can just commit changes as we want to change and modify our configuration. We'll do that on a Git repository, commit those changes, and have it automatically build a new container for us. And also, one of the really powerful things about that GitOps methodology is it allows a team of people. If you have other coworkers or a team of developers that may be working together towards a common project, or even if not everyone's working on the same project, you may value the agents and the skills and the customizations that other people and your team create and be able to share those together if we put these on the Git repo and allow people to put those updates into one common GitOps-based repository, and then everybody will have access to the updates that their fellow team members are making. And then finally, one of the other big use cases is to support developers or non-developers by giving them a instance of AutoGen Studio that's already pre-built and ready to go. Right. You may have an environment where you have a DevOps team supporting your developers who could be responsible for customizing this environment and sending out updated common builds to a team so that way the developers can focus on using the tools that you provide to them. Or in my case also, I have other non-technical users I want to create some enhanced workflows for, and then be able to package this nicely into a container, into a GUI, and to be able to share with my less technical coworkers and to really see how they're able to take the usage and build use cases and examples with this powerful visual toolkit. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few videos to take this even further. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next ones. Thanks for joining.